I, 19-year-old male, am a first year at university in the UK. I've recently become quite close with one of my roommates. I am openly bisexual, and he, 18-year-old male, as far as I'm aware of, has been fine with that. He also knows I had feelings for him in the past, and we've discussed this. This will be relevant later. I'll call him Jason. Jason and I, as well as a few others, recently went out drinking as usual. But Jason got a lot more drunk than usual. I like to typically stay sober to ensure all my friends get home safely, and thankfully, I did this night. I walked him back to our place as he was almost blacked out drunk at this point, unable to walk and throwing up on himself. During the events of the night, he lost his key, so I took him to my room, which is literally opposite his, and took him to my bathroom to clean up. I was planning on letting him sleep in my bed, and being massively germophobic, I didn't want him sleeping in my bed in a room covered in his own vomit. So I stripped him to his underwear, sat him down in the shower, and let the warm water run over him for a few minutes, wiping him down with a sponge. I gave him some of my spare clothes and put him to bed in the recovery position. I didn't think much of it and went to sleep on the floor myself. I had classes early the next day, so I left a note on my bedside table telling him to call me when he wakes up, as I wanted to explain what happened to him. When he called me, I explained about him losing his key and how he should go request a new one, and just cleared up what happened in the shower because I didn't want him suddenly remembering details and piecing the story together wrong. Alas, I was wrong, and he exploded on the phone, claiming I took advantage of him in a vulnerable state, and he can't trust me now. He called me a deviant, among other things, and quickly hung up. I'm now questioning if my taking the initiative was ever right in the first place, and if I should have done something differently. I obviously only tried to do what I thought was best for him, and I never meant to make him uncomfortable. How should I go about sorting this out? Edit, I think I may have slightly misworded the showering process. I didn't give him a sponge bath or anything like that. I removed his clothes, leaned him on his knees over the shower base, let the water run over him, and then wiped down his chest, stomach, face, and hair as those were the affected spots. Update, 2 days after this happened and we haven't spoken at all until now. He just called me and confessed his feelings for me. I don't know what to do or say. I'm confused. Muting this post for the foreseeable future while I try to process. Thanks for all the responses. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You're the idiot. You gave an unconsensual sponge bath to a blacked out roommate. He woke up in your bed, in your clothes, with a note saying that you need to talk. I'm not questioning your motives or intentions, but surely you can see how bad this looks, especially considering you have told him that you had feelings for him in the past. I can't even imagine the backlash you would get if this story was about a female roommate. Edit, strike through. He knows what he did was wrong and is fishing for people to help keep his delusion alive. Comment 2. Not the idiot. Get blackout drunk, win stupid prizes. If it was a hot girl who gave him a sponge bath, he probably would have been elated. If he was blackout drunk, he should be happy you and your friends prevented him from getting a public intoxication. I'm assuming from your post he was probably also covered in his own vomit. He should be happy you were nice enough to take care of him, let him borrow your clothes, and sleep in your bed while you slept on the floor. Now for the update, thanks for sticking around. A lot has happened since my last post. The silence between Jason and me was deafening. I was still reeling from his accusations when the next news dropped. 2 days of no contact, and then out of nowhere, he called to confess his feelings for me. I was confused, to say the least. But before I could even process that, things took another turn. The next day, I was blindsided by a notice from the university administration. Someone had filed a complaint against me, alleging inappropriate behavior. My heart sank. I knew it had to be Jason. But why would he confess his feelings and then do this? I felt betrayed and cornered. I had to act fast. I gathered messages and any evidence I could find that showed our relationship was friendly and consensual. I even had the note I left him that morning, explaining what happened. I was determined to clear my name. The hearing was intense. Jason was there looking miserable. He barely said a word. His friends, who had fueled his doubts, that night spoke on his behalf. They painted a picture of me that I didn't recognize. It was clear they didn't know the whole story. Then in a move that surprised everyone, Jason stood up. He admitted he overreacted and that his friends had convinced him to file the complaint. He said he was ashamed and that he did have feelings for me, but he was scared and confused. He apologized to me in front of everyone. The room was silent. The committee dismissed the case against me. I was relieved, but the damage to our friendship was done. Or so I thought. The next day, Jason knocked on my door. He was holding a new key to his room and a peace offering, a pizza, knowing it was my favorite. He looked like he hadn't slept. He apologized again, this time just to me. He said he was struggling with his identity and didn't know how to handle his feelings. He was afraid of what people would think if they knew he liked a guy. We talked for hours. It was awkward at first, but it felt good to clear the air. We agreed to take things slow and try to rebuild our friendship. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was a start. But just when I thought we were on the path to recovery, another twist hit us. Jason's parents got wind of the situation. They were traditional and not at all understanding of Jason's sexuality. They threatened to pull him out of university if he didn't straighten out. Jason was devastated. He didn't want to lose his education, but he also didn't want to live a lie. I could see the pain in his eyes. It was a mess. We spent the next day talking about his options. He decided to stand up to his parents. He told them he was staying at university and that he was going to live his life honestly. It was a bold move, and I admired his courage. His parents didn't take it well. They cut him off financially. Jason was now facing the reality of funding his own education. But he was resolute. He started looking for part-time work and applied for scholarships. I helped where I could, sharing my notes and offering moral support. It's been pretty up and down of emotions, from accusations and misunderstandings to confessions and confrontations. It's been, well, I'll just get into it. But through it all, I've seen Jason's true character. He's stronger than he knows. And as for me, I've learned a lot about patience and forgiveness. I was right to help Jason that night, even if it led to all this chaos. Sometimes doing the right thing can be complicated, but it's worth it in the end. Thanks for reading. My twin sister lied about my brother getting a girl pregnant. So I cut her off financially and watched as her perfect life unraveled. I have two much younger twin siblings, Ben, 19-year-old male, and Zoe, 19-year-old female. They don't get along and are always fighting. It gets so bad that my mom once secretly told me she regrets having more children. She was joking. I personally believe they're both equally at fault, and so does mom. But our dad dotes on Zoe a lot and believes Ben is just a stupid delinquent. For context, Zoe is more well-behaved than Ben, and she's currently in college doing a pretty tough program. I'm very proud of her. She worked hard for it. Ben really doesn't want to go back to school and shuts down every conversation related to it. He's also a painter or artist and is always drawing or painting. I do think he's being slightly stubborn and should be thinking more about his future, not school necessarily, but ultimately, it's his choice. Still, he can't survive on little part-time jobs forever. Anyways, my parents invited my husband and me to dinner, and we said sure. When we got there, I could tell Ben and Zoe were fighting, but they didn't say anything. Until we were sitting for dinner, and Zoe randomly announced that Ben got a girl pregnant. My dad went red and wouldn't even hear Ben out. It all happened so fast, but Dad basically went into Ben's room and threw all his art stuff out the window. He even took his guitar and has it locked somewhere in the basement. He also called Ben several names. I've literally never seen Ben cry like that. When Ben finally managed to speak, he clarified that it was just a scare. No girl is currently pregnant with his child. He's now locked himself in his room and hasn't even left to go to work, according to my mom. I'm so incredibly heartbroken for him. My dad doesn't give a shoot that he misunderstood because a scare is just as bad to him. And Zoe doesn't feel an ounce of regret either. She said that everyone was saying it and she only brought it up out of concern. She thinks he deserved to have his things destroyed because she thinks he lives in a fantasy land. Because of this, I have stopped giving my sister money. I gave her a lot of pocket money for her to spend on herself as a treat. I do the same with my brother. But I've stopped for her. My mom gets it, but my dad won't stop calling me to yell at me for playing favorites and punishing my sister for doing the right thing and rewarding my brother for being a bum. I told him I wasn't going to be speaking to him anymore, and he just told me he was disappointed. My husband thinks I should have talked it out some more, but I genuinely think they went too far this time. Some of the stuff my dad trashed were things Ben created almost 10 years ago, and the way Zoe smiled the whole time honestly creeped me out. Am I the idiot? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. Wow, your father's behavior was abysmal. How is your mother not ripping him into shreds? Maybe consider letting Ben stay with you for a bit, if you have room for him. I can only imagine putting some distance from such toxic parenting and awful sister would do him a lot of good. He's 19 years old, he can live where he wants. When his spirit and confidence are bolstered under your wing and inspired to restart life without the confines of his dad and sister and passive mother, maybe he'll look into trades training. If he likes unconventional work with his hands, or even college finally. Comment 2. My dad won't stop calling me to yell at me for playing favorites. Oh, that's Rich. He's been spoiling his little princess for years, hasn't he? And been a weenie to his son the whole time too. Is your brother a bum? Maybe. Is living an art fantasy? Maybe. In this incident, though, nothing was his fault. But your sister is absolutely a spoiled and malicious little a-hole. And your dad as well, not a good parent, so you are not the idiot. Now for the update, thanks for sticking around for the update. So after that whole mess with Ben and Zoe, things just spiraled. You'd think it couldn't get worse, but oh, it did. Ben had been holed up in his room for days, right? Well, turns out he wasn't just sulking, he was plotting. See, Ben had this friend, let's call him Mike, who's a bit of a tech whiz. Together, they cooked up a plan to get back at Zoe. They hacked into her college portal and dropped all her classes right before midterms. I know, crazy, right? Zoe was in pieces when she found out. She thought her future was over, and honestly, I felt bad for her. But then the news dropped. It wasn't Ben who did it. It was Mike, acting alone. He confessed everything, saying he did it because he was in love with Zoe and thought by ruining her college career, she'd have no choice but to turn to him. Talk about a twisted love story. The fallout was massive. My parents were at each other's throats, blaming one another for not seeing the signs. Dad was furious at Ben for even being friends with someone like Mike, and Mom was just trying to fix Zoe's college mess. As for me, I was done. I cut Mike out of our lives completely. No more chances, no more excuses. I told Ben he needed to choose his friends more wisely or he'd be next. But wait, there's more. In the midst of all this, Dad's business partner, who's been like an uncle to us, was caught embezzling company funds. Dad was devastated. He trusted this guy with everything, and the betrayal hit him hard. It was like watching a house of cards collapse. Dad had to sell off part of the business just to keep it afloat. And Zoe, she managed to get her classes back, thanks to Mom pulling some strings and a lot of groveling. But she's changed. She's quieter now, more cautious. I think she finally understands that actions have consequences, and not just for her. As for Ben, he's been throwing himself into his art. He's got this fire in him now, like he's got something to prove. And honestly, his work's never been better. He's even got a small local gallery interested in showing his pieces. It's not much, but it's a start. Through all this, I've been trying to keep the peace, but it's like holding onto a live wire. My husband's been my rock, though. He's been there for me, listening and offering advice. He thinks we should all sit down and have a real talk, air out everything. I'm considering it, but part of me wonders if it's too late for that. So yeah, that's been my week. Interesting to say the least, doesn't even begin to cover it. But hey, thanks for reading. My cousin was about to marry her half-brother because no one told her the truth about her birth. So I stepped in and blew up the family secret. Names aren't real and some details are omitted in case someone I know comes across this. So I, 34-year-old female, have a cousin named Cece, 21-year-old female. Cece's mom, my Aunt Deb, 62-year-old female, and Cece's dad, my Uncle Chris, 65-year-old male, were never able to have biological children together. While I do not know exactly what the nature of the infertility problems were, I do know that they eventually had my cousin through the use of one of Deb's friends, who agreed to be a surrogate and an anonymous sperm donor. I was 13 years old when Cece came home from the hospital as an infant, and I knew that I had never seen my aunt pregnant, but had seen her friend hanging around a lot who was pregnant, so I connected the dots. I later asked my mom about it, and she was honest with me, but made me promise to never tell anyone, because Deb and Chris have plans for when and how to tell her, and that only parents can have these talks with their kids. I promised my mom I would never say a single word about it, and that was that. Watching Cece grow up really tested my patience. Every time she started dating someone, I would think about the horror stories I've heard of donor babies, adoptees, and affair babies accidentally dating family. Cece also suffers from some not yet diagnosed health problem, and I'm worried it's linked to whoever this anonymous donor is. Last year at Thanksgiving, Cece brought a boyfriend with her. He seemed nice, but something about his face really bothered me. Maybe I'm paranoid, but they had an uncanny similarity to one another. I've done my fair share of reading on sperm donation, and it made me consider the possibility of Cece accidentally stumbling upon and dating someone she has no idea she's related to. That thought bothered me so badly that I confronted my Aunt Deb in private to ask if she's told Cece the truth yet. Deb was cold and rude to me about the topic and said she would tell Cece when the time was right. I asked her when the time would be right, and if that would be before or after she accidentally had kids with a half-brother. Deb screamed at me and told me to get the frick out of her house. When I got to my mother's house afterward, I was staying with her for the holidays. Since I live way out of town now, I was scolded by her for bringing the subject up and told to let it go. I'm having an incredibly hard time letting this go. I think Cece deserves to know the truth so she can protect herself. She's such a sweet person, and I don't think she deserves to be lied to any longer than she already has been. But I'm struggling with the idea that when and if I tell her, it will turn her world upside down and probably destroy her relationship with her parents. It would definitely fracture my family. Would I be the idiot if I came clean with Cece about her birth? Edit. After reading comments from other adoptees and donor babies, and doing some reading on my own about the impact and value of these sorts of revelations, and thinking about whether I'm prepared to deal with the potential fallout, I've decided the consequences of not telling her greatly outweigh the consequences of telling her. I will be calling my aunt later to inform her that she has a month to come clean to Cece, or I'm going to tell her everything. Thank you to everyone for your thoughts and your advice. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I am going against the grain here and saying not the idiot. I was lied to about something my whole life, and when the truth was finally forced out, I still don't fully trust the people who were involved and lied to me. I wish someone, anyone, would have respected me enough to tell me the truth. A truth I deserve to know. Cece deserves to know the truth. If it fractures your family, your aunt and uncle have nobody to blame but themselves for lying all these years. Please, please be honest with your cousin. Someone needs to be. Comment 2. Not the idiot forget about the boyfriend bit. Cece is in her 20s struggling with health issues that knowing she's not biologically her parents' child could help resolve. Could you possibly just mention to her that you've heard genetic testing can help identify health issues and you think it could help her? Let her decide and learn on her own. The boyfriend thing is most likely just in your head, but you are right that she deserves the chance to work that out for herself. And there is always a tiny chance that you aren't imagining things. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around for this update. So after I gave Deb the ultimatum, things went from bad to worse. Deb didn't take my call seriously. Instead, she doubled down, telling everyone in the family I was stirring up trouble and spreading lies. She even convinced my mom that I was the one being unreasonable. It felt like a slap in the face. I was just trying to look out for Cece, but now I was the villain in their eyes. A week passed and I heard nothing. Then out of the blue, Cece's boyfriend proposed to her. It was all over social media, and everyone was congratulating them. My heart sank. I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her make such a big commitment without knowing the truth. I decided to talk to Cece directly. I invited her out for coffee, my hands shaking the whole time. When I told her everything, her face went white. She didn't believe me at first, but I had brought proof, old photos and a letter from the surrogate that my mom had kept. Cece was devastated. She left in tears, and I felt like the worst person in the world. The aftermath was a tornado of emotions and confrontations. Cece confronted her parents, and the truth finally came out. Deb and Chris admitted to everything, and the family was in chaos. Cece broke off her engagement and her ex-boyfriend was just as shocked as she was. It turned out they weren't related, but the damage was done. Cece moved in with me for a while. She was angry and hurt, not just at her parents, but at me too. I understood. I had turned her life upside down. But as the days went by, she started to see that I did it because I cared about her. We spent a lot of time talking, and I supported her as she started to rebuild her life. Then another shocker dropped. Deb, in a fit of rage and embarrassment, cut ties with everyone. She blamed me for ruining her family and said she never wanted to see any of us again. Chris was torn but chose to stay with Deb. The family was split down the middle, and it felt like everything I had feared was happening. But here's the thing. Cece started to get better. She got a new job, started therapy, and even began dating again, this time with full knowledge of her background. She thanked me for telling her the truth, even if it was painful. And as for me, I learned that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't feel good, but it's necessary. Thanks for reading this mess of a situation. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day!